What is up, gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode on the channel. On today's episode, I wanted to discuss my 4 key tips to becoming a master persuader. Why is this something that you should even be interested in? It sounds very manipulative, to manipulate or to persuade someone else. Well, look at it this way. As you operate in this world, right? As you maneuver through life, everything is going to be a matter of persuasion. You need to be able to assert yourself in the ways that make the most amount of sense for your path and the path of those around you. In order to do that, you need to be finely attuned to the techniques of persuasion, communication, so that you can actually interact with others and you can achieve favorable outcomes for all parties involved. So what are these 4 key techniques? Well, they're more a frame of reference for how we think about human interactions on a day-to-day basis. So whether you're at a coffee shop or whether you're meeting a friend or whether you're in a job setting or whether you're in an intimate setting, everything is going to come down to how capable you are to persuade and to convince others of your thoughts, your opinions, and to actively create an environment that is beneficial for all parties involved. So number 1 is going to be ultimately to transform yourself into a more attuned and deep listener. You would be surprised when it comes to people's listening ability. So few people have the ability to sit down and to just listen to what the person in front of them has to say. Think of the last time you were in a conversation with someone. You can almost tell as they shift their eyes, as they look away, as they daydream about something else, that they are they're incapable of actually maintaining their focus on what you're saying. This has nothing to do with how interesting you are or how not interesting you are. This is a lack of ability from their side to connect and to be present and to be mindful of the interaction you're having. So few people have the ability to actually sit down, to look someone in the eye and to actually be engaged in what this person is saying. The second you're able to do that, number 1, you actively engage the person you're talking to. How they see you react to them, your engagement, your focus, your deep desired attention is invaluable. It's something that they may have never experienced before in their life, and that alone is extremely important. So beyond just the idea that being actively engaged in what someone else is saying is going to make you a more likable person and a more approachable person, you also are able to gain valuable insights into what the other person is saying. When you listen haphazardly or when you listen half-heartedly, you're really just thinking about what you want to say next. You're thinking about the important story or the cool trick that you want to introduce into the conversation, as opposed to listening to the data points that are being given to you that you can actively evaluate how you respond. Listen deeply to what is being said and use that to your advantage in your response. Don't just think about what you want to say. Don't just completely ignore what the other person is saying and just say something that is completely irrelevant. So few people are able to actively communicate. I find that when people speak to each other, really what they're doing is they're just talking at each other. They're not having a conversation. They're not taking in person X's information and actively creating and curating a response that makes sense to that. So listen to what people have to say. They will reveal a lot about their motivations, what they're looking for, their insecurities, what triggers them, what makes them happy. You will gain a lot of valuable insight that allows you to become a better and more influential persuader, and this is going to carry you forward in your life. Number 2 is to properly infect and to transmit the right energy and the right mood into the people you're dealing with. So the way that we present ourselves, the energy that we give off, right? The vibrations, the frequency at which we are operating in actually can infect the person in front of you. Think of the last time that you walked into the room and you were in a very, very bad mood, right? Immediately, that is going to be picked up by those around you, and most likely they're going to reflect that back at you. If your goal is to have a positive engagement, a positive conversation, then you need to bring an energy that is upbeat, that is in tune, that is positive. You need to create a scenario that will allow the person in front of you to actively mirror the emotions that you want them to mirror. So if you want them to be happy, you need to be in a happy state. If you want them to be focused, you need to be in a focused state. If you want them to be relaxed, you should actively try to create a relaxed state. So this is the energy that you bring to a conversation. But what about the setting that you create? In business, there's a very, very well-known sort of structure. Let's just say you're meeting a client for the first time. You may have a more formal initial meeting, and that formal initial meeting is meant to create sort of an overall understanding of the professional relationship, especially in old or traditional business. What you'll notice, the next step is more of a soft meeting. It's more of a one-to-one. It could be a dinner, it could be drinks. It could be a way to get to know your customer, to get to know your client in a more relaxed, more friendly setting, to break down those barriers, to sort of strip apart the layers of armor that people put on them on a day-to-day basis to protect themselves against the outside world. By creating a more relaxed setting, a more friendly setting, you're able to sort of penetrate someone's defenses in a way that allows you to access them in a way that's more authentic. And this is the power of infecting the person in front of you with the right mood, with the right gestures, with the right emotions. And you do this by taking control of the situation, by creating the frame. Number 3, you must play into people's insecurities. So what does this mean? And why is it important? We all have insecurities. We all have things about ourselves that we're uncertain of. We don't know whether we do it well, or we don't know whether we don't do it well. For someone, it could be their creativity. It could be their relatability. It could be their attractiveness. Each person has a deep-rooted insecurity that sometimes comes from childhood, sometimes comes from later stages in life. It could be something that they're working on. When you listen to people, when you are attuned to what they're saying, when you're actively listening to the words and the things that is said between the words, you're able to begin to identify someone's insecurities. One way to really look at that is to see what themes are consistently being said. You can notice someone and they consistently reference their childhood, or they consistently reference their athleticism or their money-making ability. This is going to give you a cue about what aspects of this person's life they are most insecure about. So why do you want to know someone's insecurities? Well, it's about understanding them on a more fundamental level. We are actually more a sum of our insecurities and our vices rather than the things that are a positive, right? Most people are identified by the things that hold them back rather than the things that push them forward. And when you understand someone on that level, you're able to tailor your conversation. You're able to tailor the things that you say and how you say them and the concepts you bring up to create an environment that is more acceptable, that is more in line and in tune. Number 4 is to actively use people's resistance in your favor. And why do you want to do this? No one likes to feel as if they're being persuaded or that they're being taken towards an outcome that they haven't come up with. There's nothing to say that this is wrong or right. At the end of the day, if your actions are ethical and therefore the betterment of everyone involved, then your ability to persuade is actually positive for you and the person in front of you. But people never like to feel that they're being actively persuaded. So what does it mean to use their resistance against them? Everyone is going to have a natural resistance when they know that they're being persuaded, or someone wants something, or someone is trying to create an outcome that is not of their own volition. So how do you break this down? Well, there's actually a couple of ways that you can use the resistance against them to create a favorable outcome for all parties involved. First is to look at their emotions. You could have someone that has a resistance, a very strong emotional reaction to something very, very specific. By acknowledging that emotion and by sort of discussing it, by calling it out, and using it to be in line with what you're trying to create or the point you're trying to drive or the scenario that you're trying to cultivate, you're able to actually get that person to remove those barriers of insecurity and sort of unnecessary resistance and move closer to your desired result. You also need to be conscious of the language that is being used. So when you listen, and this comes back to point number 1, you need to be actively listening to the consistent themes, the consistent words, the consistent traits that is being said by the person that in front of you. Look out for common phrases, look out for recurring themes, and use that language to your advantage. What I notice or master persuaders, what they do is they sort of mirror the language of the person in front of them back to them. They'll use similar phrases. They'll quote things in a similar fashion. They will present their opinions. They'll present their stories in a language that the other person in front of them can truly internalize, because actively, that is the same exact language that is being said by the person in front of you. So use language in a way that is appropriated from the person in front of you and allow your ideas and your opinions to seep or to get deeper into the person that you're speaking with simply by speaking their language. Third is to use the person's rigidity against them. The most rigid people tend to be the most insecure people. So why is this? You'll find that the more insecure someone is, the closer and the tighter they cling onto their opinions, their thoughts. They're unwilling to change because that or any simple change is a complete challenge or a complete questioning of their core essence. They're so unwilling to change because it's going to be a complete negation of who they are as a person. They are so fickle in how they approach themselves that their rigidity is just like, again, it's another defense mechanism against the outside world. So it's important to identify this rigidity and to be able to use it in a way that is constructive for both parties involved. How do you do this? Well, let's just say someone is particularly rebellious. Their whole point or their whole spiel is to rebel against their parents, to rebel against whatever it is. And they do this because this gives them a sense of independence. It's how they find themselves by just going against everything and everyone. This gives them a sense of independence and identification. By calling out that rebellion and sort of encouraging that rebellion, you almost make it counterintuitive. So by accepting that rebellion, you almost negate the core fundamental part of that person's rebellion by acknowledging that it's okay to be rebellious. So being conscious of that rigidity and allowing yourself to use that rigidity in a way that creates positive momentum in your conversation is where you want to be heading. I want to circle back and end this episode by saying that persuasion is a process. It's not something that can happen overnight. And of course, one must know themselves first before they can go out into the world and to persuade others, to influence others, to move others toward a shared goal or a shared result. But if you have zero ability to persuade anyone, you'll find yourself never being able to exit the world or to sort of assert yourself in the world in a way that makes sense. Practice how you view yourself. Practice how you engage with others. Practice understanding others, empathizing with others. Practice truly aligning your goals, your values to what others want and create a shared outcome that is beneficial for everyone. This is the power of persuasion. This is the power of sitting down in front of someone and truly actively listening, understanding them at a deeper and more fundamental level. You would be so surprised how few people are able to get outside of their own heads and to truly internalize the thoughts, the emotions, the goals, the ambitions of the person in front of them, and to be able to communicate in an active way that is able to shape the scenario, to shape the conditions of what you're saying, to create the best possible outcome for all parties involved. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider smashing a massive thumbs up. I believe that for us and the way that we operate in this world, we need to be master communicators. We need to know what we want, and we need to have the tools necessary in order to go out, to grab life by the horns, and to actively take part in our own rescue. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider smashing a massive thumbs up. It really does help me out. It keeps me motivated to keep creating this content for you. Until next week's episode, we'll speak.